So every time I've upskilled or learned something new or thrown myself at something new, it is because it serves the job in front of me. A lot of us have to hustle for it so hard that we feel like we never stop earning our jobs. And eventually it's okay to kick back and say, it's okay just to do my job, just to show up, do my job, and then walk away at the end of the day. Please do whatever it is you're thinking of doing, because if you don't make time for your wellness, you will be forced to make time for your illness. And isn't it so much better to spend a week in a beach having fun than to spend a week on the couch recovering from the flu?
Who says tech can't be human?
What is going on, Hacker Valley fam? Welcome back to the show. Let's talk about our special guest for this episode. Our special guest is Maril Vernon, an award-winning ethical hacker, Cybersecurity Woman of the Year, and Senior Solutions Architect at NetSPI. Maril helped us out recently at RSA. Maril, you came on some videos and we had a good time. I thought that yours was actually the best. My team loved it so much so that they were like, I know Maril's been on the podcast like 3-4 times. Bring her back now.
I love that for me. Thank you, Hacker Valley Media team. Y'all the real MVPs. I appreciate it.
You the real MVP. You've been Cybersecurity Woman of the Year. You have been nominated year over year for SANS Difference Makers Awards too, which I'm one of the hosts for. But for anyone that hasn't had an opportunity to be in the purple sphere and the red team sphere of Maril Vernon, what are some of the things that you're working on today, especially like as a senior solutions architect?
So today I really help to do a couple of things. I help to make sure that engagements, I work for a pen testing firm. So I'm a solutions architect at a pen testing firm called NetSPI. We also have some products, but mostly services. This was an easy transition for me to make because having that purple team background where I want to come in and hear your problems and your objectives and tell you what the best direction forward is for you and really how purple teaming can help. It's a lot of what I do as a solutions architect. I want to make sure that the things we're scoping actually meet your needs. I want to make sure we balance your budget for your value. I don't want to just charge $50K across the board to everybody. I would love that for my variable, but it's not very helpful. And I love how I get to talk to so many different people and really learn about different objectives and makeups and hierarchy organizations and still architect the solutions that are going to help them level up their programs and make their security more proactive. So it was actually a very natural transition.
Love that. Wow. Okay. So you really get to focus on helping build the right level of security for organizations, it sounds like.
I have every customer come to me, all the way from FANG-size organizations to startups and say, tell us what we need. We don't understand. This is our first time doing this. Or we feel like we've tested absolutely everything. What else can we do? Where else can we go? How can we be even more comprehensive? And I've got the answers for all those questions. So it's fun.
Hey, you got the answers. And there's a lot of people that need answers right now, especially because the job market, I feel like it goes through these ebbs and flows. Like sometimes it's hot and sometimes it feels like it's not. But I have an article pulled up here by INE Security, and it says that research shows purple team skills drive job security as cybersecurity pros seek career stability. You have been purple teamer, an offensive operator since I've known you, probably for about like the past 5 years at least. What is your take on purple teaming as a opportunity for career stability in cyber?
I think it's because we are seeking out fewer and fewer really, really siloed sets of skills, and people need kind of renaissance, well-rounded security professionals. I think that's such a thing people seek because purple specifically seeks to bridge a gap that existed previously, right? So red teams break things, blue teams defend things, purple teams learn, they adapt, they teach, they integrate and touch like so many different departments and facets of not just your security program, but your business. So in my opinion, that's happening because it's the most translatable, transferable, future-proof skill and set that you can really have in cyber. We saw this when I worked at Zoom, and I hope my manager will come up to actually admitting he said this. I was looking at a new job, going to a pen testing firm, doing straight pen testing, And he begged me not to leave. And I said, Andy, I don't think I'm worth it for you because I'm the most junior red teamer you have. And I'm the most non-technical. You know, I grew up in risk. I have all these other complementary skill sets that are not just my straight cloud hacking. And he said, exactly. If I had to replace the exploit developer or, you know, the infrastructure as a code guy tomorrow, I could do that. I know what skills I'm looking for. Languages, these capabilities, done. He's like, I would have to hire 3 to 4 people to get in one package everything that you know and do and bring to the table. And that changed my brain chemistry that day. That really showed me, like, again, just how much I'd really future-proofed myself by acquiring these very specific set of skills that make me such a well-rounded red teamer.
Amazing. And I look at especially offensive operators the same way. If they have a defensive bone in their body, some offensive operators don't touch the blue side at all. But those that do are 10 times more valuable because now they can connect the front door to the back door that's not supposed to be there.
Yeah.
One thing about this article that stood out to me was the salary premium. It said that purple team positions range from $57,000 to $186,000 per year in salary. I don't know any purple teamer that's making $57,000. You know, I'd probably triple that, but wanted to see, you know, especially someone that's been in the game for a while. What is your perception on these salary figures for a purple teamer?
I would say that's accurate. I actually at one point ended up making more than the high end of that bracket. And that was 3 years ago when like purple teams, dedicated purple teams were brand new, picking up momentum, really a thing. You saw them everywhere. You saw them at Zoom, Meta, Qualcomm, NVIDIA, you know, everyone was doing it. And so they needed to snatch up these very few people operating in this space. And I know the company who hired me came to me because there were only like 12 Googleable true purple teamers at the time. And like 3 of them have their own company. And I was like the most cheap, accessible one. So they came to me. And then, you know, kind of like what you alluded to with the job market, the landscape changed. Back then, that skill set was higher in demand, rarer to see. Now there are more folks. As we standardized how to train people up in this field, got people working in it, working in this function, trial and erroring it, and like defining it as we go. You know, the salary bumped down a little bit, but I would say that 186 marker is still plenty accurate. That's the average of where I see like the level 4s and 5s, the seniors and the principals still in purple teaming. But I think that's a little low for entry level on the 57 side. I would say when I came in as an entry level pen tester purple teamer with no skills, I was still at 75. So if you have anything at all, that should really be closer to like the 90, 100K marker.
Cybersecurity is not cheap for these reasons because you do have to dedicate yourself to learning a lot. And I think a lot of us do it in a short amount of time. So that typically comes with a little premium. I've been mentoring quite a few people and I tell them to aim for, especially the 100K mark. You know, I feel like 6 figures is such a easy target for anyone to dream and aspire to if they don't, you know, make a lot or they're just getting out of college. But the 186, on the other hand, I feel like people can make a lot more. I've heard that, you know, some people at like organizations like Netflix or Google or Meta making like $400,000.
That's true, but you have to take into mind the context of the organization. So while 6 figures is very easily attainable, I'm going to say not right out of college, not when you start off at that level 0, like where I was. I had to be in the trenches for a year or two before I could advocate for higher salary. But you're not wrong. When it comes to going past that marker, if you do work at specific organizations like Netflix runs lean and mean. So they do what I call diva poaching. They hire very, very expensive resources, make them very happy and say, we don't want to retrain someone. We don't want to onboard someone new. We just want you to be happy here. So they overpay for that skill set to make sure that you won't be leaving anytime soon. When it comes to Meta, you know, again, they can afford to diva poach. They can afford to throw a lot of money at you. So can AWS. Not everyone can do that. When I came over to being a solutions architect, I definitely took a massive pay cut from being the purple team program manager that I was over in the FedGov space. But I still advocated for a higher than average solutions architect salary because I do bring that deep technical background. And I knew that I'm not just like a typical salesperson. I bring the sales component, I bring the liaising component, but I also have lots of deep technical knowledge. So I deserve to be compensated for that, and I am. So I would say it's going to depend on your market, it's going to depend on your org, and it's going to depend on the pool of candidates you're being compared to. If you're only like 5% better skills-wise, but demanding 30% more salary, they're probably going to go with that cheaper option. But if it's not an apples to apples comparison and you can value prop, and this is so crucial, know how to value prop thyself. You can value prop yourself and tell them exactly what they're getting for the money they invest in you. That's usually when you can make the decent case to get a salary increase.
Let's break that down. What do you mean by value prop yourself?
Know what you bring and know how it serves the organization in front of you. So every time I've upskilled or learned something new or thrown myself at something new, it is because it serves the job in front of me, right? If I am, like when I was working at my first SMB, an insurance company, if I need to learn how to be a cloud pen tester, but I want to learn all these fancy in-person social engineering techniques, focusing my skill set there instead of something that provided immediate job ROI, very, very different motivations. And that is what enabled me to say, okay, I'm not only value propping this training, but then I go to the next place and say, do you have someone with deep cloud hacking experience? Do you have someone with all these skills that I have? Probably not. So when I came into cyber, I was able to get my first job on, again, zero technical skills, as you well know, zero experience, because I value propped what I brought with me. And that was the ability to translate highly technical concepts for non-technical audiences. It was the ability to learn quickly on the job. It's the ability to take in information that I hear, riff on it and spit out new output. So my ability to innovate. And that's what I sold them on. And then I was like, plus, that I won't wash out of the material. You know that if you give me the opportunity to learn something that I don't know today, I will know it forwards, backwards, and upside down by next week. So that's how I value propped myself. I told them exactly what they'd be getting. I level set expectations and I gave them a roadmap for the employee they would have 3, 6, and a year down the line. And they did. So that gave me the buy-in and the trust for even more things.
And one of the things that I've always picked up from you, and especially stars like yourself in the space, is you're good at selling yourself. You're good at not necessarily selling myself because you should buy me because I'm me, but here's the value that I'm going to bring as a person in general. I think that the value that you bring is technical, but it's also the interpersonal. Like, I feel like anyone that speaks to you is going to feel good about speaking to you. And if you have customers, that's even better. Having someone that's technical, that's going to make the customer feel like they're heard, valued, challenged, and getting what they are paying for.
I would agree. I think soft skills is something we don't emphasize enough importance on in cyber. Like, people did the reverse of me. They got in on the hard technical skills and didn't feel the need to learn the softer interpersonal skills. But as you move higher up in leadership or higher up in seniority, you need to have those skills. You start collaborating with more departments, more people, more heads of departments and practices are coming to you for your input. So being an SME isn't just about doing deep technical research and being beefed up there, although that's a big piece of it. It's your ability to assimilate with the rest of the org. Like, that should always be our job in security, is not to want to work in a silo, but always seeking to integrate with everything else.
Definitely. I have this article up. It's titled Archetype Dark Web Market Shut Down by Law Enforcement. It's by Edward Kovacs from Security Week. And this article goes on to talk about how this dark web marketplace was shut down. It's very similar to the Silk Road. They shut it down because they're buying and selling drugs on this website. I brought it up because of the opportunities that we have as cybersecurity professionals. There's some people that were working in law enforcement that were part of this operation of shutting down this group. But for many of us that work with the enterprise, we're doing this type of stuff internally. We're trying to stop communications from going out to places in the dark web. We're trying to stop those communications coming in because, let's be honest, they probably have this marketplace on non-attributable resources back to the criminal group. But what I was curious about from your perspective is what kind of things and pieces do you typically find as part of like dark web artifacts from maybe organizations that you've worked with in the past, or just things that that they can do? Like, how does this relate to most people that work in cybersecurity?
Yeah. So even though you might feel like you are working in a closed environment and what you do might not have a lot of impact to the world at large, let me tell you, those law enforcement agencies kind of depend on you to be that canary. They depend on you to be some of the data feeds that they benefit from, because they're not going to know it's a problem for you until you know it's a problem for yourself. And I think law enforcement has benefited from an evolution we haven't experienced in cyber yet, which was that they used to not information share because they didn't want to admit they couldn't catch a certain perpetrator or criminal for a specific case, or admit certain, I don't know if can we say murder? I don't know. They couldn't catch certain criminals. And I don't want to say it. We'll edit that part out. They couldn't catch certain criminals. And so, they didn't want sharing that information with another agency or department to kind of solicit cross collaborative information to be seen as a failure on their part. And that's how we still see it in security. We don't talk about our breaches because that's a failure. We don't talk about the mistakes or the missed patches or anything else because we don't want people to know, oh, well, that happened because you messed up. That's the only thing they hear. Instead of us saying, we want you to learn from our experience that if this is present in your environment, if this is your problem, you can fix it before you get breached like we did. So, to that effect, law enforcement can't step in and help until they know the bad things are happening. So they really depend on us to find those leaks, find the fraud attempts, find the patterns tied to specific industries and markets and threat actors. So the internal teams who know how to monitor their own environments are kind of the front lines of detection for the larger law enforcement agencies who can really come in and bring in some cavalry resources.
Yeah, I mean, we're all data sources at the end of the day, and law enforcement's probably using some of the data that we've curated, whether it be, someone working at a threat intel company and producing and disseminating this information, or even a researcher disclosing a tactic that they thought no one else was using. And, you find out, well, hold on a second, this researcher, this crime group is both using the same tactic. Maybe there's some relationship or at least clues to find out how that person or that crime group is thinking.
And I love that you said clues because spotting it isn't enough. Like spotting the problem is just the beginning. The real strength of a security program lies in its ability to tie, like you said, these external signals to internal telemetry and then respond in a meaningful way, both up and down the kill chain. So, it's not enough to say, oh, we simply saw an alert on a dark web forum. We need to know, where did it originate? Who's being targeted now and how? What preventative measure failed on the upstream? What detection or containment can be applied downstream to stop further lateral movement? So, too often these things are caught way too late, as we know. Like, wouldn't it be so perfect if we caught it like a week or two in? But most companies don't know that APTs are in their systems for like 6 months, just information gathering, doing nothing nefarious, going low and slow, evading logs. And so we don't catch them until after impact. But layering upstream controls is really going to help you adapt and start closing the loop on that happening to you and you discovering it way too late.
I bet. I want to go back and maybe set a definition for purple teaming specifically. For purple teaming in my mind, and help fill in the gaps here, is the mix between offensive methodologies and applying them to your defensive set of controls and policies. What exactly is purple teaming to you?
Purple teaming to me has always been the bringing together of the detective and exploitative, so like proving it capabilities, to actually close TTPs and get them across the line. The purpose of a purple team originally was to measurably move your security program forward, not just to give you more outputs to open up more tickets to deal with later. Can we actually deal with them now? Can we, all these people, this developer, this BCP person, this threat intel person, this SOC analyst, this detection engineer, can we all together discuss this TTP, why our control failed or our mitigation? What could the improvement upon that look like? And let's make sure that we really closed it as we move it over the line. Nowadays, I'm going to say that definition of purple teaming is to proactively improve defenses with offensive punctuation. So it's really training blue teams on adversarial mindsets, behaviors, and motivations so they can identify and more easily chain together IOCs, but like offensive behaviors, so that they are more well equipped and educated to spot nefarious activity much, much quicker. If that's the only thing we're doing is we're training them to see one thing and correlate what should be happening around it, see if they can find evidence of that and prove they've got an incident, your speed to detection, your mean time to detection is already better, which means you're already on better footing for that containment and eradication phase. I would say that in the resilience model, purple is really the definition of the adaptability piece. How well can you learn from this, adapt what you're doing, and better face it next time? If you're putting all your eggs in the thwart or the react basket, you're kind of already screwed.
Mm-hmm. What are some of those misconceptions that you think are out there about purple teaming?
I think a big misconception is purple teaming and such just a glorified red team engagement with blue team debrief. I hear one more person say it's purple team, just more pen testing. I'm gonna hit the roof. True purple teaming is meant to be a live, collaborative, bi-directional, breathing thing. It's not just about identifying a problem, right? In security, we'll identify a problem and talk about the problem. And, as a red teamer, if I just hand off my finding, I don't know if that problem gets over the line. I don't know if I'm going to see it again. I don't know if it's still present in the environment 6 months later. Purple teaming seeks to give you that 360 visibility so that you can literally tell people, we found it here, it started here, this team did their part, this team did their part, and this team did their part. Are you all doing your parts? Good. And that's really not purple teaming. That's really white teaming. White teaming, right, is the combination of all the colors on the light spectrum. And it's all these functions, the offensive, the defensive, the builders, the privacy, the legal, all working together to take care of their piece of security.
So altruistic. I have never heard of these people all getting together under one kumbaya fire pit. And have you seen an engagement like that? A white team engagement?
I have seen them. Again, a lot of people are doing purple activities without realizing it. They do white activities without realizing it. When I was interviewing at MITRE 3-ish years ago to go be a purple lead, they called it a white lead because it truly does touch, like I said earlier, so many facets of your program. Case in point, when I was a purple team manager, I was just meeting with the engineering teams for the apps, the application development organizations, the ADOs that I was in charge of, just the and I had a lot. I had 18 different teams I had to meet with on a biweekly basis. But even more teams were coming to my leadership and saying, if she's purple, she kind of has a touch base with all of us. Shouldn't she have a pulse on what all of us are doing, even outside of just the security multifacet, but the business multifacet? And I was like, you're absolutely right. I should be talking to finance. I should be talking to audit. I should be talking to ops. I should be talking to people, because every single one of them has a component like this to their job, and they all need that guidance. And that's the goal of a purple team liaison, is to break those down, explain how we're all customers for each other's inputs and outputs, and tell them where their responsibilities and their trust boundaries begin and end so that they can be in charge of their piece. You don't have to micromanage them so much. So, I've been a part of white team efforts, again, without people realizing that that's really what we were doing.
I think that a lot of organizations do want that. And I say that because I was just speaking to these two founders that started a company called White Knight Labs. And what they do is they do they call it, I think, like a full scope red team engagement. But what that really means is they work with multiple teams across the board, and they'll apply for your company and try to get a job. And that's like part of their red team engagement. And then if you pay them, like if they get paid out in the first payroll run, that is another indicator that you have a security gap somewhere. And I've seen a lot of articles recently about North Korea specifically applying for US jobs, one, to just work and send money back to the regime, and then two, to steal company and perform espionage, corporate espionage.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Datadog was very public about the fact that I think this happened to them recently. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, we're seeing more of it. That's why, their ability to deep fake live, deep fake on camera, all these deep fake detection tools are coming out, like Validia.ai and stuff. What was your question though? What was the question behind the question?
I was just commenting on, I'm seeing the need for it, especially because this company, White Knight Labs, they got paid on behalf of their red team engagement. And it showed a vulnerability that people generally, I don't think, are looking for when it comes to a red team or a pen test engagement.
It's like a gap in the people process, in the people department processes. Yeah, so red teams are so important. And a lot of people think red teams are just more pen testing. But red teams are so different fundamentally. As a red teamer, you really do come at a company's people, processes, and technology. So that's a gap in both the people in the HR department being able to identify these things and their process to make sure that employees are valid and there was a valid hiring manager need and a valid opening on this team. And, when orgs get big enough, that's what makes it super easy to socially engineer them. I can walk in and say, oh, I've got a meeting with Brian over in finance, and there's probably a Brian working in finance, and there's probably an opening on that. And I'm here for an interview, but I'm a little early. I'm happy to just head up and wait on my own. That's how you get free run of the building. These things are hard, and people at the end of the day are always going to be our biggest weakness, our biggest attack surface, because they can bypass your enterprise controls every single time. And that's why I love the collaborative nature of purple teaming. That's why I love getting, my first kind of purplish thing I ever did was get a bunch of people from different departments on a call and just kind of let them talk amongst themselves and see how much they could learn from each other. And then we started formalizing it into like a collab stand-up. But, it just kind of, the more you educate people on what to look out for and why someone might be coming to them with this motivation, the more they can use their cognitive bias to start poking holes in someone's story. Because that's really all social engineers are trying to do, is evade your cognitive bias, and people don't trust them. They're so vigilant. They stop trusting their instincts. And I think if people trusted their own instincts more and knew that, we on security are here to protect the org. We all get a paycheck from the same people. We all want us to be secure. We're not just here to harp on you or tell you you suck at your job. We actually want people to have confidence in themselves, to identify these things and bring them to someone's attention and not be afraid to be wrong or be afraid to be ridiculed or be afraid to be in trouble when they identify certain incidents. Yeah.
So when it comes to things that are non-negotiable as part of your security stack, especially with the lens of that you have, seeing both red and blue, what's a non-technical item that you should have in your security stack, whether it be like your security policy or some type of document? And what is that non-negotiable technical item that you think everyone should consider having in their technical stack?
Okay, you absolutely should have an InfoSec policy and an acceptable use policy. Without these things, if you're handling data security, you're in scope for some regulatory body who's going to say, if you don't have those things, we're going to find you negligent and fine you a bunch of money. So if I had to start a security program tomorrow, that'd be the first thing we do, because it, at least from a documentation standpoint, covers you. Even if your policy says our internal policy is to follow the NIST 853 standards with regards to information security, great. Now we know what standard we're holding you to. The non-negotiable technical thing I have to have is asset inventory, complete hardware and software inventory, because that is one of the things that sprawls so quickly as an org grows. And orgs don't usually grow in a slow organic nature. They usually grow a little spike way up, like double, triple their population, and then plateau for a bit. And that is where assets get provisioned, and sure, BYOD, and this will be temporary, and 6 months down the line, it's still in effect kind of thing. So I think the biggest attack surface is from the attack surface we do not see and we do not know. So I would have to have a complete asset inventory that I trusted, with everything running on them, so I know where my gaps are. It's not sexy. It's not XOR. It's not AI. It's not any of this. The CIS first six, y'all, if we were doing them well, half of us wouldn't have jobs, but we're not.
Yes, that is such a fact. And, it's almost like keeping your room clean. Keeping your room clean is one of the easiest and hardest things that you could ever do in your life is, waking up, making your bed, putting your stuff away before you go to bed, putting your stuff away again. I think that's good old fashioned asset inventory, asset management, and it's one of the first things that every cybersecurity framework tells you to do. Hey, first understand what you have so then you could then protect it. But it's so easy to get undone. I've been trying to figure out why it gets undone. I actually just finished the book, Attack Surface Management. I still haven't gotten to the bottom of it. And now people are talking about a new category that I know you know all about. Continuous threat exposure management now is like the new attack surface management.
There's always new attack surface. And the problem is we don't get enough of a grip on one attack surface before we introduce another one into our environment. So we weren't doing good IAM, good identity and access management. We weren't doing good inventory management. And then we add on the cloud. And that sprawls and that extends your publicly facing footprint and everything else. And then before we got a good handle on cloud, we started plugging AI into everything, which, like I said, is a hammer looking for a nail. So before we're really, really good at one thing, we keep leaping to the next thing, thinking that will help us, or thinking we just buy an automated tool that will solve our problem. And oh my gosh, that is why security budgets are so inflated and getting reduced, and they're not fully utilized. And it just pains me. If I worked for a product vendor, the number one thing I would do is make sure you have configured our product to its most optimal configurations for your environment. You're getting the most out of this tool you can possibly get. If there's something we say we can do that we can't do for you, why? Do you have something in place that's literally limiting us from executing that capability? Otherwise, we're not doing our job as a vendor.
One thing that I've always loved about you is that you remind me of myself in some ways. everyone in my circle must get into cybersecurity one way or another. And I think the last time we were speaking on the podcast, you were mentioning that your mom was also like, learning more about GRC and thinking about getting into the cybersecurity field. I know that you're a mentor to many, and you've worked with a lot of children. First, I want to start off with, where did your mom land in, learning about and maybe breaking into cybersecurity? And then I want to ask you some stuff about mentorship.
Shout out to Mama Vernon, who still never came on my podcast. That's fine. Love you. She is actually a service delivery lead for the incident response function at CMS now.
Oh, wow.
So she blew right past GRC, went into technical documentation. She helps Acquia out with all their RFPs and stuff. And she's also performing an incident response function, helping to triage incoming incidents and alerts and stuff so that ADOs can make sure their manually added and manual investigations are value added. So bravo, Mom.
Yeah, bravo, Mom.
Yeah, look at you now. So she did. She's thriving. She's loving it. Every friend she connects with who's like, how did that layoff go? She's like, what layoff? I work in cyber now and I love my life, but I'm never going back. So yeah, that story ended up with a happy ending. Very, very happy for her. What are your questions about mentorship?
Yeah. So one of the things that I was blessed with was a Black mentor who was working in the enterprise space when I was coming up. So my first mentor in the game was someone named Marcus Carey. He's written the Tribe of Hackers books, and he was such a great friend to me. But I didn't realize how much of a luxury I had having, someone that I identify with as a brother. He felt like an uncle to me, and he was on the enterprise track, which I wanted to make the most money. So that's why I thought it was awesome, the track that he was on. But I know that someone having a mentor like you is an even bigger luxury. You're a woman, you're an extrovert, you love fashion, you love looking good in person and virtually as well. Shout outs to you. But I wanted to talk about what are some of those things like that you bring to the table for mentorship that your mentees specifically like to experience from you? Like, is it your mindset? Is it the way that you dress? How do you provide value these days to people breaking into the space?
I approach mentoring a lot of the same way that I approach purple teaming and solutions architecting. I say, why do you think you want a mentor? And why do you think you want it to be me? Like, what do you think I can do for you that are you trying to get a job? Are you trying to overcome a hurdle? Are you trying to develop professionally? And I really want to make sure it's a good fit. So one of the things I do is I make them do a lot of internal introspection before we get started. Like, I'm like, be very clear on your goal, be very clear on, what measurable progress looks like, and be very clear on how much time you're going to dedicate to the advice I give you. Because as mentors, it breaks my heart when I give someone's like, tell me how you broke in. How'd you do it? I give them the step-by-step guide and they're like, cool, I'm going to do that. And I'm like, cool. Did you buy that book? Did you read it? They're like, no, that was a lot of work. So I just thought I would take a boot camp and get a cert and like try and break in that way. And I'm like, yeah, that's the way to do it too. Like, my way is not the only way, but, there's a certain efficacy to my way. So a lot of my mentees say they like working with me because I'm going to give them the real. I'm going to say, this is why I think that's a good idea, a bad idea, or push back on your idea. And I make them start developing their critical thinking skills for themselves, and also the ability to articulate their ideas and defend their ideas. Because if they're like, I have this great idea, I'm going to propose it to my boss, I don't just go, sure, great, do that. I go, okay, what opposition are you anticipating? What do you mean? Well, do they have like endless money and availability and they asked you for an idea? Or are you bringing this up of your own volition? Or, that's how you're going to sell it and paint it is very, very different strategies depending on what you're working with. So it's never just an easy yes. I never let them off the hook easily, but they always grow as a result. So I think that's one aspect to my mentoring. But the other thing is I'm very brutally honest. If I'm not impressed, or if you're not keeping up, or if you're not cutting it, it gets pretty real pretty quickly.
I'm the same way. I think that there's nothing worse for me is when someone asks me for very specific direction and then tells me they took a different path. Like, I'm totally cool with anyone taking their own path. I think that you should. I hope anyone would remix my advice. But when it's like the exact opposite and we just spent 2-3 hours on the phone, it's definitely jarring. I try not to hold things like that personally, but it makes me wonder, like, all right, one, did you ask me the right questions? And two, are you actually committed to seeing this process through? Because everything is a journey.
Do you ever ask them why? Do you ever say like, did you find a piece of what I said relevant, or it didn't work out in practicum, or you had to pivot, or do you ever push back on them and make them justify why?
The one reason why people don't follow my mentorship is because I always ask them to put themselves out there on LinkedIn. Hey, put what you learned today. Like today, I was deep into Gen AI vibe coding. Like what happened? Like talk about the experience. Like someone's gonna think that is interesting, and it's gonna be me at a minimum, because everything that you post, I'm gonna have that bell on, and I'm gonna read it.
And I'm invested in you now.
Exactly.
I agree. I think so. I think personal branding is like, it's been the cornerstone of a lot of my success. And again, it's not the only way to make a name for yourself, but it is the way that I know, and a way that I think is beneficial and easily accessible. And I try to push people to put themselves out there too. And I think the main oppositions I hear are, well, someone else probably already said this, or it's not new or novel, or why would someone listen to me say it? And what you have to know is that even if I dispelled all the information in all the encyclopedias or almanacs or something, if you did it, it would be completely different. And someone might just prefer your delivery to my delivery, even though it's the exact same information. And also, someone might not be following those people or might not identify with them as much, but they identify with your approach or your learning style. Or you might be the first person they've heard talk about it. We can only see 5% of our feeds, you guys. 5% of the content of people you follow is what's shown to you. So, do it anyway. Who cares? Even if you want to remix a blog or an interview I already gave, do it in your way, and you will find people who are interested in you. You will find people who want to come along. But I think being transparent is the best way to build trust, and building trust builds credibility and assurance. So unless you're going to use your platform for literally you to sell yourself, no one else is going to give you theirs and trust you with it, because they haven't seen what you can do with it yet. So I would say just try. Even if you suck, post the suckiest post you've ever posted. Make that post suck. And then go back and see what you could have done a bit better. But it probably doesn't suck as bad as you think. It's probably not that bad. So.
Exactly. You know, one of the things that I see all the time on LinkedIn is you, because you're part of so many different organizations, and you've had a podcast as well that people are still listening to over and over again, even though episodes are on pause right now.
That is wild. Wild.
One of the organizations that comes to my mind that you're a part of is Mind Over Cyber. And, I've talked to you and your partners on this program quite a bit. I have such a shocking time coming to this realization that cybersecurity people don't take care of themselves. We talked about, maybe the average salary being somewhere in the 100K mark for people that, have a similar background as you, probably more along the lines of $200,000. But we don't take that time to invest in themselves and in our minds and back into our bodies. But wanted to hear what you all are working on with Mind Over Cyber and how it relates to taking care of yourself.
Yeah, I agree. I think, a lot of us have to hustle for it so hard that we feel like we never stop earning our jobs. And eventually it's okay to kick back and say, it's okay just to do my job, just to show up, do my job, and then walk away at the end of the day. But something I say myself saying to coworkers on a weekly basis is, please do whatever it is you're thinking of doing. Because if you don't make time for your wellness, you will be forced to make time for your illness. And isn't it so much better to spend a week in a beach having fun than to spend a week on the couch recovering from the flu? So, Mind Over Cyber, I really love the work we do there, because we're all about portable and accessible mindfulness techniques to help cyber professionals defend their peace, basically. But I love it because peace looks so different for so many folks. Some people find RSA very overwhelming and difficult to deal with, and they got to take multiple breaks and go to their hotel room and just say nothing out loud. Some people thrive on that, like me, because I don't get to talk to enough people working in my home office normally. So I'm like, I want to talk to as many people as possible. But then I get home and I got to recharge my batteries too. So the work we're doing is really just to remind defenders that it's okay to defend your peace. It's okay to have boundaries. It's okay to have non-working hours. It's okay not to answer a Slack at 11 p.m. or 6 a.m. It's okay to step away and breathe. It's okay to say, I can't do one more interview, one more cocktail hour, have one more conversation today. All of those things are okay, and please do them, because We don't have enough of us. We already know that. It's very difficult to get in here and harder to stay here. We know that too. So the more people leaving, and there is a mass exodus of professionals saying, I've had enough. I've had enough of this hustle. I don't want this life for myself anymore. You know, they're leaving the big sexy jobs like Meta and stuff to go work at grassroots startups that don't demand as much of them. So please take your time off. Please prioritize your wellness. And we say mental wellness, not mental health, because there's kind of a negative stigma with mental health. That means you're already in crisis and you need to recover from it versus, again, thwarting it off. But I say again, just like in purple teaming, remain adaptable. Know what your points are. Know when you're getting overwhelmed. Know when your battery is at 50%. You shouldn't spend that last 50%. You should conserve that last 50%. Know what burnout looks like for you and when you need to communicate with your leadership and communicate with your teammates. And, you know, when you start seeing it affecting your job and your creativity, for me personally, that's when I know I am approaching burnout and I need time to recharge, or I'm not serving anybody to my highest capacity. So that's why I love what we do at Mind Over Cyber.
It gives me goosebumps just thinking about, because, you know, your mentors that you choose early on in your career, they're going to get you to a specific point. And then groups like this, hearing that you're not the only person that's feeling burnt out, even though you have all of the things that you work so hard to get, but you're still feeling that tension. Hearing other people feeling the same thing is powerful. I remember the first time that I felt a feeling of anxiety, and then someone saying like, oh yeah, I felt that same way around the same time in my career. I was like, what? Like, oh, like I thought this was just personal to me, but no, this comes with constantly reinventing and improving yourself, especially in a field that's what determines your success, is how much you're able to learn, especially now that things are moving even quicker than ever before.
And are you ready for a spicy Maril take?
Yes.
Okay. You want to talk about working in silos? You want to talk about the person working in security who probably experiences burnout and isolation the most? It's a person with typically an 18-month job tenure who is high visibility, responsible and accountable for the entire org. The person probably suffering the much, as inflated as this is going to sound, is probably your CISO. Your CISO is responsible for getting a lot done with a very small budget. Do more with less is the constant theme of a CISO's life. Again, they only last about 18 months. That's how long it takes for an org to discover a breach. And the first sacrificial head to roll, your CISO. So we find a lot of people coming to our workshops, benefiting from that tribe knowledge and knowing another CISO they look up to and respect, like 20 years their senior, if you're 2 to 3 years into it, has experienced these things and felt this isolation and felt lost and, needed to lean on peers for support. That is the most affirming piece of solidarity I've seen the most at our workshops. The CISO's literally sitting there at RSA just going, it's okay. And that guy's going to go out and be in charge of Discord security tomorrow. So, it really is impactful. And it shocks me how many CISO, actually doesn't shock me, how many CISOs are getting our workshops and webinars for their people, or they're doing it as vendor, they buy these workshops and they conduct them for customers to help bring some of this mental wellness and preparedness to customers that they really value, that they don't want to burn out. It's just a beautiful ecosystem to see working with each other.
It is. You all are doing some great stuff in this space. I feel like it's long overdue. We've been feeling burnt out, especially the security leader and CISO. But I'm excited to see what you all do with Mind Over Cyber, see all the events that you go to. I saw Mind Over Cyber as CISO XC and RSA. So I know that the brand and the group and the tribe is expanding and growing. Maril, I want to say thank you again for jumping on with me. We got to keep this going. Maybe this could be a regular thing. You coming on the show at least every few months. If you haven't done so already, be sure to check out Maril in the show notes or description, wherever you're listening or watching. You got to connect with her, follow her work. She's always producing some great content and being a great community advocate. And with that, we will see everyone next time.